Hi everyone, thanks so much for being here. My name is Kat and I make houseplant videos here on Good and Planty. If you just want to absolutely love this video, please consider liking it, commenting, subscribing, or following me on Instagram. All of these things help me grow my channel like a plant. All right, today I want to break down the differences between moss poles, stakes, and trellises. We all sort of know that they are used to help support plants, especially bigger plants, but when you should use each method is sometimes a little bit confusing, and also there are some drawbacks to a few of these methods that I want to talk about today. The truth is that these three methods are a little bit interchangeable and there's a lot of overlap, but I'm hoping that after you watch this video, you'll be able to pick the method that makes the most sense for you and of course your houseplant. As a huge coincidence, today's sponsor happens to be extremely relevant to today's topic. Huge thank you to Trellises for sponsoring today's video. Trellises is a woman-owned business selling designer plant trellises and other accessories for the houseplant community. They sell both staked and wall-mounted trellises that come in many different sizes for all your different sized plants. The trellises also come in a bunch of different designs so that you can match the growth pattern of whatever plant you have. I have the Anthrella plant trellis, which is inspired by the Queen Anthurium. This one is about 9 inches tall and perfect for 4-inch pots. I also have the Monstrella wall-mounted trellises in the color cherry, and those are really great for vining plants that you want to attach to your wall. I will definitely be highlighting these products a little bit later in the video because I genuinely think they are amazing products. But if you want to save 10% on your order, you can use the code GOODANDPLANTY, and I will have a link to the shop down below in the description box. Thank you so much to Trellises, and now let's jump right back into the video. All right, first I definitely want to tackle the topic of moss poles because that is super common, super confusing, and I don't know, I just want to break that down real quick. Moss poles definitely come in a bunch of different flavors, but I would say us as the houseplant community kind of clump any poles that have a growing medium wrapped around them as moss poles. Two examples that I personally have within my collection is a DIY sphagnum moss pole, which I will plug my moss pole video here, and I go way more in depth on how to make these poles, how to take care of them, and stuff like that. And then I also do have a few coco coir poles, which of course isn't technically moss, but I'm gonna clump all of these together today. Both act very similar, as do the slight different varieties of moss poles. I would say it's really up to personal preference as to which one you want to use. So the main idea behind moss poles is not only to provide stability to your houseplant, but also to give vining epiphytic plants somewhere to grow into. Sphagnum moss and coco coir are both materials that really encourage aerial roots to cling onto. That allows the plant to mature upwards and also produce larger leaves. So you can see on my micans, that I'll talk about later, you have smaller leaves at the bottom and larger leaves at the top, and that's mostly due to the moss pole. Basically, these poles really encourage the plant to grow up, not just lean up. Therefore, the best plants for moss poles are those that like to vine, like vining philodendron, pothos, and syngonium. That is not an exhaustive list at all. While those are the types of plants that would benefit the most from a moss pole, you can use moss poles to stabilize almost any other kind of plant. For example, there was a time where I had my Thamatophyllum on a moss pole just to kind of stabilize it and keep the foliage a little bit more vertical. There were no adventitious roots. The plant doesn't vine, it's more of a shrub. So it didn't do anything growth-wise to benefit the plant, but I preferred that aesthetic. My micans, on the other hand, as I mentioned, is a vining plant with aerial roots that actually benefits from having a moss pole to grow on. As the aerial roots kind of grew into the pole and clung on, the leaves have definitely gotten more mature and larger as time went on. I actually had to add the tree leaf wall-mounted trellises onto my wall to give the micans something to grow onto because I wanted to allow the plant to keep growing, but I didn't want to make a whole moss pole extension. I also really recommend tying the vines to the pole near nodes so that you're really encouraging that aerial root to moss contact. This all sounds amazing, but there are a few drawbacks to moss poles, and that really comes down to the maintenance aspect of it. The moss poles really need to be kept moist to have the biggest benefits and progress. And on top of that, as I mentioned, if your plant starts to grow past the pole, you will either need to make or buy an extension or just like a whole new pole. My last note on moss poles is that they definitely perform best in high humidity environments like grow tents, for example. It allows the moss and the aerial roots to stay moist, and then the roots don't dry out, the moss doesn't dry out, and everybody is harmonious and encouraging growth and the whole thing. I'm really bad at moss pole maintenance here. It can show sometimes. If you have a grow tent and you really want to see this plant thrive with a moss pole, I definitely recommend trying that out as well. And again, moss poles are a very large topic, so I'm trying to give a little bit of a glimpse into it in this video. But if you're really interested in moss poles, making your own, how to take care of them, I do have an in-depth video on that. So again, I will plug that so you can learn a little bit more. Next, I want to talk about stakes. And again, stakes come in many different forms. I don't know why, but now like when I'm saying stakes, I'm thinking of the meat. I don't know why I did that to myself. I feel like I'm talking about steaks now. That was a mistake. There are metal stakes, plastic stakes, and of course, what I have, bamboo stakes. I would say these are pretty common in the houseplant community, and they are literally just sticks of bamboo. I have them linked below in my Amazon shop, and you can get them from like a foot tall to a couple feet tall, and usually they're fairly inexpensive. Personally, I find stakes the most useful when it comes to supporting or correcting floppy, lopsided, or small houseplants. All you have to do is take your stake, regardless of what kind of stake it is, and gently shimmy it into the soil behind the plant so that you're not breaking up any roots. You're probably gonna break a root or two, but that's okay. So then once you have your stake in the soil, in the pot, you can fasten the plant to these stakes a few different ways. You can use this Velcro that I have here, and you basically just wrap it around the plant and Velcro it on. You can also use garden tie. This is a ribbon, so you can just kind of wrap it around, make a little knot. And the last example that I have are these little clips. So you can just, you have your stake, you kind of put the vine up here, and then you clamp them together with this little clip right here. And again, if you are curious in any of these products, they will be linked in my Amazon shop, linked in my description box. If you have a funky looking plant, this is a really great way to kind of make it grow in a way that better suits your preferences and the aesthetic of your home. It can also definitely prevent damage to your house plant if you have a very leaning topsy-turvy plant. Eventually, maybe that plant will kind of get too heavy for its own good, and then the vine can snap, so stakes are a great way to prevent that as well. Almost any plant can benefit from a stake. I have used these on my cacti that were stretching too close to the sun, but I've also used them on my leggy aglaonemas when I just needed to encourage them to grow vertical. Eventually, the plant will kind of get the point, grow and stabilize in a way that makes sense, and then you can remove the stake if you want, and if that makes sense for the plant. I kind of think of these as little like plant casts almost, or crutches at least. And lastly, we have trellises, which are very similar to stakes but are not quite the same. I would actually dare to say that this is a middle ground between moss poles and stakes, depending on what you need. Trellises do encourage vertical roots and larger leaves, but they do not have anywhere for advantageous roots to grow into, so that's where they differ from the moss pole. And as far as comparing to stakes, I would say that these, first of all, provide usually more surface area for the plant, and on top of that, this is more of a long-term solution than a stake. Some plants that benefit a lot from trellises are Hoya, for example, because they don't have aerial roots that need to grow into anything, but they do love to grow up, vine, wrap around things. So trellises are a really great solution for that. I would also say that trellises are great for smaller houseplants that maybe can't really hold a moss pole in their pot yet, so specifically like 4-inch pots. I think trellises are a really great short-term solution in that case. For example, my philodendron melanochrysum very clearly wants something to vine up on. It's spreading out, it's vining up. If it was bigger, because of the type of plant it is, because it has aerial roots, I would be super confident that a moss pole is the perfect solution for this plant. However, it is a smaller plant. I know that if I put a moss pole in here, it would be a very temporary solution and I would have to bump up that moss pole, you know, within a few months. However, I'm not jumping to a stake because I don't think a stake is substantial enough to kind of hold all of this growth. So I think a trellis in this case is the perfect solution. Literally all you have to do is take your trellis. In this case, this trellis has, this trellis has very soft rubber tips. This is also really, really nice because the wood isn't gonna rot in the pot. So you literally just take it and you gently wiggle the trellis into the back of the pot so that you're not breaking any roots, but you're really getting it in there. Ta-da! I'm gonna take the vines and lean it here up on the trellis, and I'm gonna put a tie by the aerial roots. Sorry, I meant node. Here's an example of what it looks like in its final form. I have the trellis gently in the soil, but stabilizing it. And then with this Velcro, which actually came with the tree leaf trellis, which is very convenient, I tied a node to the trellis, and now she is a happy, stabilized gal. Another option that I didn't talk about today are wood planks, but I don't have a lot of experience with that. I've never tried it out for myself. And then on top of that, Plant Life in the Tropics has done a lot of good content on that topic. So if wood planks sounds like something you would be interested in to help support, stabilize, and encourage your plant to thrive, I would check her channel out. But besides that, that's pretty much all I have on this topic myself. Thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions, please comment them down below and I will do my best to answer them. Again, thank you so much to Tree Leaf for sponsoring today's video. Use code GOODandPlanty for 10% off your order. It will be linked down below in the description box. Please subscribe to my channel if you don't already and you want to see more planty content from me. Please like this video. Maybe become a member if you're feeling crazy, I don't know. And I will see you in my next video. Bye. Huge thank you to all of my members. Thank you to O'Neill, Val, Celine, Audrey, Lacey, Heather, _B, Jacqueline, Linda, Michaela, Brooke, and Laura. You are all the best. Thank you all so much for being members, and I will see you in the next video.